Part of this vibrant city, TSAVO Delight emerges as a beacon of beauty, seamlessly blending the pulse of urban life with the tranquility of nature. This isn't just a location, it is an investment haven promising boundless returns for those who dare to invest. They say the golden rule in real estate is location, location, location. TSAVO Delight, just 3 minutes west of Nairobi's Central Business District, is strategically positioned within the prestigious Westland Sub-County, east of Lavington, south of Muthangari, west of Kilimani, and cradled by the Kishore River, a truly exclusive haven. TSAVO Delight isn't just a property, it is a lifestyle. Strategically located along Oloitoktok Road, a stone's throw from the Total petrol station at Kileleshwa Junction, this is your golden ticket to a life of convenience and opportunity. The good news is you can own a piece of Kileleshwa with 0 deposit and 0% interest rates. Imagine the joy of having your money work for you. Our flexible payment plan spans up to 5 years, making ownership a reality for everyone. We have the following typologies. A very good evening to you wherever you're tuning in from. Karibuni sana, karibuni TSAVO. TSAVO, we are a real estate investment company and we exist to enable you achieve financial independence through affordable, amazing apartments. My name is MC Benmego, the Classic Man. I'll be your host today. And today we are having a conversation around what happens after a project has been complete when it comes to legal processes and procedures. And today I'm joined by our project lawyers from FMC Advocates who are going to take us through this session. And be sure to send in your questions. And if you're joining us right now, please send in your fire emoji. And without further ado, I think I'll take time to introduce these amazing lawyers. Leo amepiga luku ajabu. Hata walikuwa wamekuja na blazers, but then they said because of you, so that we don't outshine in all aspects. Anyway, karibuni sana. You may introduce yourselves and we'll be good to go.
Great. So, hi everyone. My name is Lewis Donga. I'm an associate at FMC Advocates, and I'm so happy and so pleased to be joining you this evening. So let's have a good discussion. I look forward to having a good discussion with you all. Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alfred Nyaga from FMC Advocates, and it's a pleasure to be here having this great and insightful discussion. Looking forward to a good conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, nasikia unaongea kama pastor. So I cannot wait to see where we go with this conversation. But you can pray for us and then we can get started.
So let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening as we educate our investors and our potential investors. May this discussion be fruitful, and may everything we are going to discuss, may they understand everything which we are going to discuss. And it is in Jesus' name we pray, trust, and believing.
Amen.
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 Amen. So I think most investors really have a lot of questions when it comes to anything legal to do with our projects. There's so many questions that come up, and it starts from the point where the investor is being onboarded all the way to the point when they receive their sectional title. And for you as lawyers, you begin to engage with investors from the onset. And I'd like to understand, maybe for someone who's joining us for the very first time, what is the process like, especially for a new investor?
That's a very good question. Actually, a lot of investors, you'll find that they usually, if they are purchasing for the first time, they usually have a lot of questions like, at what point am I going to get the sectional title? And basically, once an investor comes on board and they want to purchase, say, an apartment, say apartment A, here at TSAVO, the first thing which we usually do is to prepare something we call an agreement for sale. And basically, the agreement for sale, we set out the terms and obligations of both the purchaser and the vendor. And in this situation now, the investor who is coming on board will be the purchaser, and TSAVO will be the vendor who is selling that particular apartment to the investor. And this agreement for sale will basically lay out the terms, obligations, and some of the obligations will be maybe payment of the purchase price. And the agreement will be very clear on this is the payment plan in which the investor is going to make payments of their purchase price. Say their purchase price is 5.9 million. So the agreement for sale will basically lay out what is the payment plan the investor is going to make these payments. Then after all that, after the investor signs the agreement, basically what happens is we send this agreement to TSAVO, and TSAVO also signs the agreement. So we've had both the parties now have signed the agreement, and now at this point the agreement is legally binding. Then after that, we are going to dispatch the agreement to a place called the Land Registry, and this is under the Ministry of Lands. And here the agreement is going to be franked, or what people commonly know as stamping. So after it's stamped, basically the investor, we're going to alert the investor like, hey, your agreement is ready for collection. The investor can feel free to come to offices and come to collect the agreement. So basically after that, now the investors collected the agreement, we now come back to, I've mentioned about the payment plan. Some investors have an extended payment plan, and now they continue making the payment plan, and they continue making the purchase price, and also make the payments for the legal fees, which are divided into 3 stages, which are basically going to form a foundation and a basis of one of our discussion we are going to have. And I believe the legal fees are scattered into stage 1, 2, and 3. And for the investor to be granted possession of that particular apartment, they must have cleared the stage 1 and 2, and also paid the full amount for the purchase price. So basically, it is at that point they'll be able to get the apartment as we continue to follow up on the sectional titles.
Okay, yeah. Okay. That is quite comprehensive from the point when the investor comes in, the agreement. I'm just going to highlight as I understand. So there's the agreement, I get the agreement, we sign, both parties sign, and then you've said it is flagged, or what did you say? To be stamped.
It is franked.
Franked?
Yeah.
Okay. Frankly speaking, I didn't know there's actually...
You learned a new legal term.
Yeah, and vendor. Yeah. So talking about which now, there are stages that you've mentioned, because also on the finance team, last week we had a webinar, and in case you missed out on the webinar, you can check it out on the processes, on the finance processes and procedures when you're purchasing a unit with TSAVO. So we mentioned a lot to do with stage 1, where we were told they're just legal fees, and who receives payment for stage 1 cost, and what do those costs actually entail?
Thank you so much, Migwi. That's a very good question, actually, because a lot of investors will actually have a question like, who am I supposed to pay these legal fees to? Why am I paying these legal fees? At what point will they be due? So basically, these stage 1 legal fees are actually due or upon execution of the agreement for sale. So basically, once the purchaser now signs the agreement for sale, then the stage 1 legal fees are actually due, and they make these payments to us as the developers advocates. And these legal fees for stage 1 are usually the legal fees and of course the VAT and the office disbursements, together with something we call the cost for registering the sectional plan, which I believe is going to also form part of this conversation. That's because it is basically what will lead us to how the investor is going to get the sectional plan. So the cost will basically be included in that stage 1. So that will form basis of the stage 1 legal fees, which are payable to us as the advocates for the vendor.
Okay. And so talking about the stage 1 cost, there's the stage 1, there's stage 2, and then stage 3, because I understand that before the apartment is actually handed over to the investor, because the whole process is the investor comes in, the agreement, both parties commit to the obligations, and then once the project has been completed, if depending on the agreement, if you're able to complete payment before time, you are handed over your sectional title. But then there are these stage costs which you have highlighted. The stage 1, as Alfred has explained. But then what does stage 2 actually entail?
Okay, so stage 2 is usually the cost for the proportionate cost for registering the sectional title. Mm-hmm. And so this cost is normally paid when we are getting towards the point of the practical completion. So what TSAVO will call completion of construction, legally within the agreements, we call it practical completion. Yeah. So when the development is complete, at least 90 days is when the stage 2 is going to be due. And at that point, it needs to be very clear that this amount of money is paid so that the sectional title is registered or comes out in TSAVO's name. And that's the idea and that's the purpose. So and I know at some point you're going to discuss about the proper georeferencing process from the point where we do the georeferencing and getting the sectional plan and getting a sectional title. But that's what the stage 2 costs normally entail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now at this point, when we're talking about the stage cost, now it means that the project is almost complete, and then there are the requirements that both parties have to meet so that now the project is actually handed over to the investor. So what are some of these requirements that are required of both parties, especially for the investor, for them to actually receive the unit for which they purchased?
So maybe for TSAVO, of course, is finish the development in time.
Yeah.
And for an investor, of course, when an investor is very, very keen on handover, and like you've said, there's 2 types of investors.
Yes.
There's those who've managed to pay for their units either very close to or actually on the date of handover, or on the date of practical completion, let's call it that. Yeah. And there's those who have a longer payment plan. So for handover of possession, this basically means that you have been given the unit, which means you can now begin earning your rent from this unit. Okay. But of course, there are certain preconditions before you get that kind of possession. Particularly, first you have to have paid your first stage. That's what we call the stage 1 costs. Those ones you'll find most investors have settled at the point of execution, just as like Alfred has said, they're paid at the point of execution of the agreement. Okay. You'll also need to have paid stage 2. The stage 2 cost that you've said is the proportionate cost for getting the sectional title. Then you'll also need to have, of course, paid your purchase price in full. At that point, you will now be entitled to get possession of the unit. If you would like to stay at the unit, you are free to come into the unit and now start actually occupying the unit. But if you'd like to be getting rental income, then from that point, you're entitled to get rental income from that point. So those are the conditions, both for if you're an investor who finishes prior to practical completion or after, those 3 conditions have to be met.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think you've mentioned something to do with being able to complete, and both parties now you've completed your purchase price, but then the unit needs to be inspected because now this is what I bought. Wengine wanasemanga nitaamini ile siku yenye nitaiona. And so there's something I've had in conversations called defects liability period. So maybe will you highlight what is defects liability period and what does it entail for the investor?
Thank you so much, Megu, for that good question. So basically, a lot of the question the investor will usually have is basically after I'm given this apartment at the time of handover, like what if I go inside and I find some defects? What will happen? Will the vendor be able to rectify these defects? Okay, then some other investors have this worry, like my payment period is so extended that it's going to go beyond the time the vendor, now TSAVO, is going to complete this development and is even going to extend to some months after. What happens? Am I going to be given just my apartment? What if there are some issues with the apartment? What will happen? So basically, that's the basis of what the investors are usually worried about. And the first thing is what we call the defects liability period, or we can just use the word DLP. And in this case, the DLP means is a period of 6 months from the anticipated completion date. That is the date when now the architect has issued the certificate of all the work in the development being complete. So that defects liability period will run from that particular date and extend 6 months from that particular period. And within this period, if there are some defects or some things, issues in that apartment, then the purchaser raises those issues with the vendor, now TSAVO, then the vendor will come on board and rectify those particular defects in the apartment. But now there are some conditions which the purchaser must meet. The first condition is the purchaser must have taken possession of that particular apartment, because we are saying that before the purchaser gets possession or being handed over the apartment, they must clear the stage 1, stage 2, and also they must have completed the purchase price. Then they get possession of that particular apartment. So they must be in possession of that particular apartment, completed their purchase price. Then that particular defect the purchaser has noted in the apartment, they must notify it to the vendor in writing. Then the vendor is going to take up ownership and rectify that particular defect. Then the purchaser ought to notify the vendor of this particular defect in the apartment within this defects liability period. And I mean that, as I've stated, the defects liability period is 6 months. And the vendor, I mean the purchaser must notify the vendor about that particular defect in the apartment within this particular period of 6 months.
Oh, sorry to cut you short.
Okay. Yes.
And the purchaser now is the investor.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
You can carry on.
So basically that's all about the defects liability period, and that can be contrasted to the inspection. So basically the inspection, I've talked about the purchasers who have extended payment plans. The payment plan is extending far beyond the anticipated completion date or when the apartment is supposed to be handed over to them. Basically, let's say the purchaser has 60 months payment plan, which started when the development, this being an off-plan development, when the development has already begun. So basically what will happen is, if the purchaser is handed over that apartment after the defects liability period, then the vendor is going to give the purchaser 30 days inspection period. And within this, these days, then the purchaser inspects the apartment, and if there are any defects, any issues with the apartment, then they raise those particular issues with the vendor. Then the vendor is able to rectify those particular issues. And I think this is something which is very unique with TSAVO, considering that now defects liability period has already lapsed, but hey, the purchaser is being given 30 days 30 days period to inspect the apartment, and if there are any defects, they're able to to rectify it, but this does not extend, of course, to the acceptable wear and tear, the ones which, of course, if there was some tenant in that apartment, there's some wear and tear which is acceptable. This does not extend to that. Yeah.
Okay, I think that is well explained. And if you're watching, please make sure that you send in your questions. Some of the questions that you may be having as we continue, send in your questions so that we'll be able to address those questions towards the end of the webinar. Now we've talked about there's the initial, once I'm coming in as an investor, this is where I start. And I've done the stage 1 cost, I've done the stage 2 cost, and now I'm about to receive ownership. And most of the times, we receive a lot of questions about, hey, how do I get to own my apartment? Is it a lease? Is it a sectional title? What is the process like now that I've completed my stage 1 and stage 2 cost? What is this other step that I'm supposed to take in terms of ownership, and how does that look like? What are the requirements? What is required of me as an investor?
So I think maybe Alfred, you can start us off on the process, the registration process, and then I can take it up from there.
Okay. Lewis, I'll just take half of the process, then you can begin. You can take the rest. So basically, most of the time, the investors will usually have this question from the beginning, from the onset, like. At what point am I going to get my title? Will it be a lease? What will it be? And all that questions. So basically, for the investor to get that particular ownership documents, once the development is complete and the architect has issued the certificate of practical completion, and now a licensed surveyor is going to be engaged, then the surveyor is going to do something we call georeferencing. Okay, let me explain that. So basically, georeferencing is the surveyor is going to get coordinates of that particular apartment the investor is purchasing, then just reference those coordinates to the earth surface. Then from there that is done for all the whole development. So after that, the surveyor is going to prepare something we call a sectional plan. So basically, this sectional plan will need to be registered. And the first step is having this sectional plan registered at the county offices and the Survey of Kenya, basically the Ministry of Lands. Then after that, we are going to basically when you are registering this sectional plan, you must accompany it with several documents. The first one is called it's an application basically for these sectional titles. It's called Form LRA9. Basically, just an application. It's a sample for the Ministry of Lands where you just download and fill all the details. Then it's supposed to accompany that particular sectional plan. Then the second document which should be accompanied by that particular sectional plan is the original certificate of lease or title, now basically the head title, where that particular development is sitting. And after all that, it's lodged at the office, those offices I've mentioned, the county and survey of Kenya. Then after that, the registrar is going to close that particular title, the original title where the development is sitting, close that particular title. Then after the registrar closes that particular title, is going to open a new register, and this new register is going to be in TSAVO's name. So the title is going to come out in TSAVO's name. And after it comes out in TSAVO's name, now we are going to start doing transfers. And I don't know, Lewis, you want to take it over here?
Yeah, sure, I can. So at this point, when we've gotten all titles, they come out first in the developer's name. So let's give an example of TSAVO Delight. So once we've completed construction and we've registered the sectional plan, every single apartment title will first come out in TSAVO Delight's name. Okay. So from this point is where now, and this is where now the investor has to be very proactive with certain things that they need to do so that we can now actually give them the apartment title. Yeah. The first basic prerequisite is to sign the transfer instrument. So we'll have a transfer instrument basically saying that TSAVO Delight is transferring this particular unit to let's say Alfred as the investor, which is very, very key for us to do. Number two, they also need to pay the stage 3 costs. So again, as we've explained, there are 3 stages with this cost, and the third stage is mostly the registration and valuation costs and costs that come together with that, and these need to be settled again to the advocate's accounts. Number 3, and this is now more new, and it's come in with the new change in the land management system, with what you call Adisasa. So for projects that are coming in now, and we'll be doing a sectional title processing, that transfer will need to be done on Adisasa. Okay. So if for investors who've seen with our agreements, in our agreements, it's a prerequisite that you have to open an Adisasa account before we even begin the transfer process. And that's because this will be done on Adisasa. The transfer process will be done on Adisasa. Okay. So once that happens, we will just lodge the transfer again on Adisasa, and now we will switch, or we will transfer the title from TSAVO Delight to the investor. Of course, with all these prerequisites having been met. Okay. So that's really an overview of how an investor gets. It's actually, we've done the whole thing from the point where an investor is being onboarded all the way till you get your title. Okay. That's the process of how it's done. And at every point, at every step, what do we need to do for you to get your title? Okay. Yeah.
I have a question around now when we are talking about the sectional title. At this point, and this comes as a question when people are starting off, and maybe some don't give thought to it, but at the moment when they are receiving their sectional title, or when they're thinking, okay, which is the best way to go about this investment in terms of an investment vehicle? Should I form a company? Should I just do a partnership? In the case we are a number of people, maybe I bought this apartment with my sister, maybe I bought this apartment with my relative. What investment vehicles at that point do you recommend to investors, whether at the beginning or during now the transfer process, and what are the pros and cons when you're choosing to use this particular investment vehicle?
Okay, very good question, Migui. And I think that's a very, very key concern our investors usually have, because just to note, like I had this conversation last week with an investor, and the investor was very concerned. Like they were like, I purchased the unit myself. Now I want to incorporate a company. How would you advise me to go about it? Like I'm the only director in that company. How should I go about it? So basically, there are several investment vehicles, and I wouldn't want to say that I recommend this particular investment vehicle to an investor. It usually depends on the preference of the investor. So basically, the investment vehicle can either be a natural person or a legal entity. And the natural person is the investor individually. If it's me, Alfred, I'm purchasing this particular apartment in TSAVO as an individual. So the agreement is going to be Alfred Nyaga as the purchaser. And the legal entity is going to be either a company where the investor incorporates a company. Say there are several, maybe it's a family company. Maybe instead of having so many investors like Alfred, blah, 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 and all those, just decide we're going to form a family company, and this family company is going to hold all our assets, and we are going to have shares like amongst ourselves. So depends with the preference of the investor. Another investment vehicle, which is in form of a legal entity, is going to be a partnership. Just like the three of us just decide, look guys, I think we can form a partnership. Let's just form a, depends, is it a limited liability partnership, whichever. We just decide we're going to form a partnership, and we name it whichever name, we register it, and look, we have that partnership holding our assets. And the other investment vehicle will be some investors opt for cooperative societies. Like you just open like and I don't know, the best example which is coming it is not a cooperative society per se. I don't know a chama. I don't know Lewis, what do you think the chamas for ladies?
First off, even men have chamas, but
well
but it's more of, I think chama is just the word we use colloquially around, we just say chama. But the legal definition is a society. It's a cooperative society. So what we find, we call SACCOs. Those are cooperative societies, and they're legal bodies that can actually own. They can buy apartments in their name, of course, for the benefit of all their members. So this normally works for, find these like 20, 50 people. You know, even legally, there's some limitation on the number of shares a company can have. In a private company, it's 50.
Yeah.
But you're coming together as let's say the class, like you guys when you were in high school, your entire class has decided to just come together and invest.
Yeah.
So you decide, for us, maybe this works better. So it's a cooperative societies. I wouldn't use the word chama. I'd just say cooperative societies, just to avoid any. Because most chamas are unregistered. It's just people coming together. Yeah.
That's great, Lewis. And I think the last form of investment vehicle, though not very common, it will be a trust. So basically, a trust is where we are having a trustee and a beneficiary. So basically, the trustee is holding that particular apartment on behalf of the beneficiary, and they must act on for the benefit of the beneficiary. So it brings about some limitation, like you can't really go overboard with those obligations you've been bestowed upon as the trustee. So say the apartment has been complete, the development is complete, you've been handed over possession and all that, and now you've started receiving rent from that particular apartment. You can't, that particular rent you're going to be receiving from that particular apartment should be for the benefit of the beneficiary. You can't start misappropriating funds or just having those funds on your own just for yourself. Those are for that whole transaction is basically for the benefit of the beneficiary, and the beneficiary could either be a minor or an incapacitated person, maybe a person who is not able to enter into contracts. And I think that's there are some categories of people who cannot contract. And what I mean is these people cannot enter into a legally binding contract, and maybe a person of unsound mind cannot be able to contract or enter into this contractual obligation. So they have a trustee holding that particular apartment on their behalf as the trustee, and they act for their own for the benefit of the beneficiary. Yes, so basically those are the examples of investment vehicles, and it all depends on the preference and the circumstances of the investor. So you can't really tell the investor, like, I recommend this kind of investment vehicle to you, because their circumstances, their preferences might be very, very different.
Yeah. Well, I think we can have yet another discussion around succession planning because there's a lot to learn there. And there's something you mentioned while you were talking about trust and rental income and all that. And this is actually a question that most investors ask. Now that I've done my stage 1, stage 2, at what point do I begin to receive rent? And how does property management look like for me? What are the requirements for me to, to get started? For some, prefer self-management as a way to manage their own investment. But then there are also pros and cons to it. So what does property management look like and then how does rental income, at what point do I begin to receive my rental income? And again, like I've mentioned, what does property management look like in that area?
Great. So again, of course, I'm sure investors are aware TSAVO offers financial independence, financial freedom, and as part of that, let me call it package, there is the aspect of property management, and this is an aspect that is present in our agreements from the very beginning, that investors are aware there is the option of property management by TSAVO through TSAVO Lifestyle. And just as Migwe has said, there are two options. Yeah. You can manage the unit yourself, or if you prefer, you can have a Lifestyle come in and manage it for you. And in this case, at the point where you're doing this, first off, of course, you have to have been given possession. The unit has to be yours. So therefore, going back to what we've discussed on handover, finish stage 1, finish stage 2, finish paying purchase price. At that point, you are allowed to, you can now start receiving rent. But of course, to receive rent, you need an actual tenant in your unit. So you have two options. You, as yourself, you can come in, market the unit, look for somebody, someone stays there, make sure they are comfortable, make sure if they need anything, you basically operate as a landlord of a particular unit. But what TSAVO offers is that let's take away that burden from you. Let's take up that burden and let's actually do this for you and manage your units for you. And therefore, you'll find in our agreements for sale, we have a specific clause on property management done by TSAVO Lifestyle. And what we need investors to know about this is that we will need investors and TSAVO Lifestyle to enter into what we call a property management agreement. By that point, investors have now converted. They've become landlords. So if you'll see, for investors who've been here for a while, they'll see in the document it says landlord. And that shows you the kind of level of investment you're at.
Yeah.
And you enter into a property management agreement with TSAVO Lifestyle, basically empowering them to manage your unit for you, to market your unit for you to get a tenant, to receive rent on your behalf, and also to deduct service charge. And of course, service charge is the monthly contribution that investors make towards making sure that the rest of the development that's not really owned by anybody else. We talk about the lifts, we talk about the car parks, we talk about the access ways, all of these things. Sunset has a very beautiful front garden here. All of these areas that are not owned by any investor also still need to be maintained for the general aesthetic of the development. Yeah. So this contribution is done every month by investors. For those who are self-managing, they have to remit this amount. Yeah. Those, of course, who are being managed by TSAVO Lifestyle will just be deducted. So these are the kind of things that will come in with the property management. For the benefits are really self-explanatory, because if you look at the kind of work it entails to actually manage a unit. Yeah. Just from the marketing perspective of it, you have to make sure that you're marketing just your unit. You're not marketing an entire development because you don't own the entire development. There's some legal quagmires you can get yourself into with respect to intellectual property. So you have to manage just your unit. And once somebody comes in, you have to make sure this one individual always has water. This one individual, the lights are working, and you don't have control over the whole development. Yeah. So it can be a logistical nightmare if you just manage it yourself. And if you look at even with the service charge, worrying about remembering every month, it works like a standing order. You never standing order, you don't think about it. You just know the money is there, the money is gone. Yeah. But when this amount is being deducted automatically, you don't have to worry so much about, I haven't paid service charge this month. This service is being offered as a package means that you know who to go to if anything goes wrong. And it works for so many investors in all of TSAVO's projects that it's a tried and tested system. Yeah. So property management is a key thing to consider when you already have the apartment. Now, how do I start benefiting? So TSAVO Lifestyle just comes in to make sure that we ease that burden. Get your money. We'll do the stressful part of managing your unit. Of course, there is a management fees that's also included in the property management agreement, but it's less of a hassle for an investor, in my view. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, and in case you may be having questions about property management, we'll be having a webinar next week where we'll be talking in detail every process that is around property management, like Lewis has mentioned. And also the good thing is we make it as passive as possible. You've worked so hard for your money, and now it's time for your money to work hard for you. You can't just be thinking, okay, nitapata mteja wapi. Of course, you're looking at retirement, and when you're retired, you don't want to be involved. Unataka ukule pesa yako pole pole. Yeah, so you mentioned something earlier about stage 1, stage 2. Now, you had also mentioned the stage 3 costs. And I presume stage 3 costs comes with the stamp duty. This is the point where everything that needs to be done for you to get the sectional title, or for everything concerning transfer, has to be handled at that point. So would you help us really understand what happens now at this stage, the stage 3? Because now, as Lewis was talking, said the property management agreements now tell you are the landlord. So for you to have that sectional title, what is that process like, and what are the stage costs involved in this stage 3?
very great question, Migwi. And for the investor, perhaps the investor out there worried like how, at what point will I pay this stage 3? When will I get the sectional title? So basically, with the presumption that the investor has paid both stage 1 and stage 2, and they've gotten possession of that particular apartment, they've been handed over possession of that particular apartment. So basically, before we do the transfer to the investor, they must have cleared the stage 3, because we are supposed to pay the stamp duty, which is actually 4% of the purchase price. So say the purchase price is 2.3 million. So the stamp duty will be 4% of that particular amount. So they must have paid that particular amount so that we can remit it. Then there's the cost of registration cost and valuation. So basically, we must pay the registration cost before we transfer the sectional title to their name, because we had mentioned earlier that the title is going to come in TSAVO's name, and we need to do transfers to these individual investors in the development. So before we do the transfer to the investor, they must have cleared the stage 3 so that we can be able to process their sectional title in their individual names. So basically, the stage 3 comes before we do the transfer process. I don't know, Lewis, you have an...
Yeah, I think I'll just add something that maybe specifically on the process, because ideally when you've signed the transfer, the stamp duty that's payable is on market value. And for our investors who are perhaps in our completed projects, for example, Coral Bells, they may have noticed that the stamp duty they are paying for, the value that's being pegged for stamp duty right now, is different from what they paid on purchase price. So currently, because we also handle Coral Bells, studios this year have gone up from 1.8 in value to 2 million. And one bedrooms are now, they were at 3.2, I think they're slightly higher. So I think they both increased by 200,000, which means that the stamp duty you will pay, or the stamp duty that's included in your agreement, there's a very high chance it's not the stamp duty you will pay when you're done, because the value will not be the same. You're just paying it on value, on purchase price right now, which gives you a rough idea of how much you'll be paying, but you will have to pay stamp duty on the value, which means the unit has to be valued. So prior to payment of stamp duty, you have to value the unit and determine how much is this unit actually worth. Once the valuation is completed, we normally engage the government valuer to value the units, a particular investor's unit for us. They value and determine the amount of stamp duty payable. Then we remit stamp duty. Again, with Adisasa, this is really just being done online, raising the invoices, making the payments. After that, that's when the transfer can now be booked and registered. So at that point, the transfer would have to be signed by all parties, has to be valued. The value is normally endorsed on the transfer that says this is how much this property is worth and this stamp duty payable. Once you pay stamp duty, again also paid on Adisasa, generates the invoice, you will then register the transfer of the sectional title still again on Adisasa. So just key for investors to note that the stamp duty is not per se on your purchase price. It will very most likely be higher by the time you're doing. So those who manage to pay within 2 years, good chance your value is not going to be too high. But for the longer payment plans, it's something that you definitely to consider. So incentive, faster you finish paying, the less your value, the value is going to go higher, the less stamp duty you pay. Yeah.
Wow. So take away, like you just need to be done with the payment, because I think property appreciates in value. And if you just wait longer, you're just going to pay more for that particular unit. Now, talking about which, after I've completed payments, of course, there are advantages of me sorting out everything that is required for me to sort so that I get my sectional title. And how do I put it? So in terms of I've finished paying for my unit, but some investors may take longer to take
be done with the process.
To finish up on the process. And so sometimes there are the advantages to it, and there are also the cons to it. One which you've mentioned, the investor has to be aware of as they are.
Maybe I'll take the first one. So something I think in our experience we've seen Of course, when you're receiving your rent, Lifestyle is doing such a good job managing your units. Some of these things may slip, but we can't understate the importance of actually finishing registration of your title. And I think I'll take the first one is that you're free to use your apartment as you wish. There are people who later on might need to take up a loan, take up a security, but you don't have that asset that you can actually use to secure your loan. But if you have an apartment, you have a title to an apartment, it's very easy to go out and take a security. Should you wish to transfer later on in time, you just transfer it. You have the title, you'll just transfer what the section title you have. So that protection, and the law protects all registered proprietors in Kenya, that you can, in law we used to say you can use and misuse, which means whatever you want to do with that it is yours. You want to sell, transfer, you want to charge, you want to lease, you want to license, you want to do all these things, you're free to do that, and we can't really understate that importance. Maybe Alfred, you have
Lewis, that's a very, very good benefit, because I remember last week we had this scenario, and the investor was actually asking us in the office, like, what can I do after I get this apartment, after I get the sectional title? So we were like, you can do whatever you wish, like everything within the confines of the law. You can go and take a loan and have that particular apartment as your charge. Basically, the security, what Lewis has discussed. Another advantage of having this particular sectional title is you have possession of that particular apartment. And every month, if you have a tenant at that in that particular apartment, you are guaranteed of rent every month. I mean, that's a plus. If you're able to just from wherever you are able to get that rent, you are guaranteed of that monthly rent. Every month you have that rent in your account. So having that particular ownership document guarantees that you are the actual owner of that particular apartment, and you are going to be receiving that monthly rent every month if you have a tenant in that particular apartment.
Okay. So now that I have possession of my unit, are there things that I need to consider after now I have possession of my unit, after I get my sectional title and know that I'm the legal owner of this piece of property?
Yeah, so I think this is what we are calling post-registration considerations. Okay. You have your title, you're getting your money, so it might be to your mind that you're done and everything is over, but there are two key things that you need to consider as an investor. And the first one, of course, is service charge. We've talked about service charge. Those who are self-managing have to remit service charge to TSAVO for them to actually make sure that the property is running well. Particularly on service charge, again, on these TSAVO webinars a couple of times, we've talked about the Sectional Properties Act and the changes it brought about, how we moved now from management company to the corporation. And within our corporation bylaws, the ones that are prepared for the corporation, specifies that each investor needs to contribute monthly towards the general upkeep and taking care of the development. And this is now what we're calling service charge. So it's just that now in this case, we have the developer, the corporation, has taken this obligation and given it to TSAVO Lifestyle, that you manage the development. So service charge that payable by anyone is going to be payable to TSAVO Lifestyle. So those who are self-managing, it is a very, very, very important obligation that you remit service charge on a monthly as it's required. It makes sure that there is no stalling of certain essential services. You can imagine situations where we have lifts that are not working, but then we don't have the expenditure, we don't have the capital to actually just fix this. And we have tenants living in 15th floor, 20th floor who need to access their apartments. It reduces, of course, even the marketability of the development. For those, of course, who are being managed by TSAVO Lifestyle, it's a bit easier. This is a cost that you know for sure will be deducted from your unit. As long as your unit is occupied, you don't have to worry about service charge. There's also the service charge deposit that's normally paid at when you're getting your agreement. So for our investors, if you look at our agreement for sale, has the initial service charge deposit, and this amount of money is basically a six month service charge payment that's made specifically just as a buffer for 6 months to make sure that you have 6 months service charge in the books. Another very key consideration is, of course, the taxman. there is what we call the monthly rental income tax. With the Finance Act 2023, has actually reduced that tax. People are asking if it's possible to reduce tax, but the percentage of tax, it's been reduced from 10% to 7.5% for any rental income that's being accrued for rent that is above, annually above 288,000, but below 15 million per month. So that's about, say, 24,000 per month to 1.25 million in a month. It's within that range. You're supposed to pay 7.5% to KRA as your monthly rental income tax. Again, we've seen heightened efforts from the regulator to just make sure that everyone is remitting tax. So it's a very key consideration that if you're within this bracket, you have units that are totaling to within this bracket. You as an individual, then you need to remit monthly rental income tax. Seek tax advice from lawyers and accountants who would be better placed to advise you also on tax planning. If you would like advice on tax planning, it's something that you also need to consider posts for all your assets. It's not even just TSAVO assets, it's just all your assets. You definitely need to consider that. So these are the kind of post-registration considerations that an investor needs to keep in mind. Once they're done with they have their titles, it's something that they need to keep thinking about.
Okay. So now we have a number of projects which are coming up, and we are almost complete. And now we have our newly complete project, which is TSAVO Step Up. Now, you'll face that camera. And there's a lot that can be said because you've been dealing with many investors, especially in Step Up. And there are some who maybe have had, because we'll be coming to the questions. I've been observing the comments, and we have a number of questions which are coming in. What would you advise an investor, especially those who, because now the lapse of the construction period has lapsed. So what will you advise the investor, given that some also have a 5-year payment plan? With everything that we've discussed today, what action they can actually take?
Thank you so much, Mwigi, for that particular question. And actually, now that to the TSAVO Step Up investors, now that the development is complete, and now we are thinking about handover of the apartment and investors starting to receive their monthly rent. So basically, it is important for the investor, if they want to get possession of that particular apartment, they first clear their purchase price, then they clear their stage 1 and stage 2 costs. Then at that point, they'll be able to get possession of their apartment. So it's very, very crucial that the investor plans their finances well, and maybe they're able to complete the purchase price on time, so that they can be able to get the apartment, as at that time the apartments will start being handed over to the investors. And one thing Migui has talked about is the extended payment plan. And this extended payment plan does not mean that you have to diligently pay those for the whole 5 years. If your finances allow and you are able to make the lump sum payments just once, and you're able to make the payment in a lump sum, say your balance is around 800,000 and you are remaining with, say, 12 months, and the development is year complete and handover started. If you have that amount of money in lump sum, you can use that particular money and just clear the purchase price, clear your stage 1 and stage 2 costs. Then at that point, you'll be able to get your apartment, and you'll start earning your monthly rent as we progress towards obtaining your sectional title and the payment of stage 3 later in the transaction. So, Lewis?
Yeah, I think we've already started seeing certain emails regarding the titling process where so I guess very importantly on our end is to begin and to make sure that we are continuing very well with the process of georeferencing and getting the sectional plan properly registered, which is our obligation, and we will make sure that we do that properly in accordance with the law. But again, asking those questions is very important. It helps you know exactly where we are at. And of course, as a legal team, we do provide updates, especially with respect to titling. That one is something that investors will always ask questions on. And once that sectional plan is registered and we have titles for in TSAVO Step Up's name, for those of you who will have completed your purchase price, it's really not just going to be a process of transfer. So at this point, we would also advise that for those of you who perhaps do not have ADSASA accounts, it's very, very important that you open your ADSASA account. It's pretty simple. It's done online. You just log in and open an account with ADSASA. It'll make things significantly easier both for us and even for yourself during the transfer process. Also a very key consideration again is on property management. How do you want to manage this unit? If by now perhaps you're not really sure, you've not really made your final decision, then you need to identify how exactly do I want to actually start earning from this unit. Do I want to manage myself? Do I want to engage TSAVO Lifestyle to manage it for me? And if I want to engage TSAVO Lifestyle, who do I talk to? What documents do I need to? And we've actually just discussed that in the property management agreement. So these are the kind of things that at this point now, when the units start letting out, is what you need to start looking at and start thinking about. For those of you also who have completed, we've talked about defects liability period. I believe at this point we're still within the defects liability period. So you can, if you're done with your purchase price and you're entitled to possession, you're free to inspect your unit and confirm that everything is in order. Any defects that you feel they are there. Alfred has talked about the prerequisite conditions for fixing the defects. You have to notify TSAVO in writing. It has to be within the DLP period. So once you've inspected and considered that, I think this crack is really, really too big. TSAVO projects don't have cracks, but should you for some reason find that there is any defect in your unit, then feel free to contact TSAVO in writing and notify them of the specific defect, and they're legally obligated within and actually contractually obligated to make sure that they fix these material defects in your unit. And overall, make sure that the processes that are within the agreement, you have just gone through them step by step. Payment of stage 2 is very, very important. Make sure that you pay stage 2. When we get the titling, pay stage 3. That way it makes the process quite seamless for us. Yeah.
All right. I hope there's nothing more left to the step up.
No.
All right. I think we can begin addressing some of the questions that we are receiving here, and I think I'll try and read out the questions relevant to this discussion. Although our team is also busy engaging our investors right there. So I see Pitana Mutana. He says, great being here, very informative already. If you are a potential investor, I highly recommend TSAVO. What these lawyers are saying is exactly the process. Very transparent and straightforward. There is Evans who is asking, I'm an owner of an apartment in TSAVO Step Up. Thank you for delivering and the handover. The handover will be communicated soon, very, very soon. You will receive an email concerning the handover. I see Kaka here asks a question. My employer gives allowance to staff if and when on a mortgage with a proof of engagement or ownership being a requisite. Will I get such before completion of full payment? If yes, at what point? I don't know whether you've gotten the question or I can ask it. Let me read it again. So Kaka says, my employer gives allowance to staff if and when on a mortgage with a proof of engagement or ownership being a requisite. Will I get such before completion of full payment? If yes, at what point?
Okay, I hope I've understood. Alfred, if you've understood differently, feel free to stop me in the middle. But what I'm understanding is that their employer will allow them to take out a loan with the employer to buy a property, let's say it's an apartment, on the condition that they can show either prior engagement or they can show that they have the ownership documents. So, okay, so first off, I think specifically if the idea is that this employer will require that the unit is mortgaged prior to completing or prior to getting your title, then unfortunately for TSAVO, that's not going to be possible, because what happens is that the only point you'd be entitled to charge the apartment is when the apartment is actively yours. And that only happens once you've completed paying your purchase price and you have gotten your sectional title. If what this calls for is that you just need to prove that you have begun engaging TSAVO, you are given the purchase price, you then pay, then register the mortgage afterwards, then that's in order. Because I've seen, especially you'll find in certain scenarios that there are people who just want to, like even banks, right now, for example, if you want to make a payment of more than 1 million, they ask for a proof of document that this is where this money is going. Yeah. So if your employer is agreeable to you just giving the agreement for sale, which you will be given prior to even go, at the very beginning, you'll have your agreement for sale. If that will be proof enough for you to actually get the amounts, and then you can then register your charge later on. Once you've completed paying the purchase price and the unit has been transferred to you, then that option is available. I think that's what you understood, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, Lewis, we had that similar. We had a similar scenario some weeks ago where the investor wanted to get a mortgage from their employees in government. So they wanted to get a mortgage from the employer. Then the employer wanted to have the ownership documents, now the title, and with that title they wanted to charge that particular apartment. So basically what we advise the investor is for this particular apartment to be charged, then they must have completed the purchase price stage 1, 2 and 3 and gotten their sectional title. Then from there they can be able to charge or do whatever they want to do with that particular apartment. But just like Lewis has said, if Kaka's employer just wants proof of engagement and they are agreeable to the agreement for sale being enough proof of engagement, then by all means they can proceed with the agreement for sale, but with the condition that they are going to register that mortgage once they get hold of that particular sectional title. Okay. Yeah.
Kaka also asks a question, so I think I'll answer this, and then you can take on the question legally.
Yeah, sure. That's right. We trust you.
So he asks, what happens if an investor, for some reasons, is unable to service the monthly payments? So the finance team will always reach out to you, first of all, to really understand what is happening and to really know why are you not able to make payments, to remit your monthly payments. And once they do, we can restructure your payments. So whether you want us to reduce the amount, we can reduce the amount. If you had a bigger unit, let's say a 2-bedroom, we can literally move you to a smaller unit, which now you're able to make payments towards it more comfortably. Now, if you are unable to, we can also move you to another project, which has a longer payment plan, so that we can extend the amount of time that you have to pay towards that unit. And if that is not also possible, we have an option called TSAVO Saves, where instead of you quitting your financial independence journey, you can actually still remain. We keep the money for you. And as once things pick up, if you had lost a job, because the problem could be, you can decide, things are really hard, let me draw my money from this investment. And that means that if you do that, maybe you're quitting on your investment journey. And so to just avoid that, we have TSAVO Saves that enables you now to still have the money intact, and when you're ready to still come back. In case you're not able and the circumstances don't allow you to really continue with the investment and making your monthly payments, we have an option where we refund you 100% of the amount of money. Now, I think our lawyers are going to answer on the...
Is there a legal answer? Alfred, is there a legal answer?
Yeah, there's a legal answer tied to it, because I believe TSAVO being very gracious enough, to give you all these options at your disposal if you are not able to meet your monthly obligations. Like if worse comes to worse, like completely you are not able to fit into either of these events, the savings, you are not able to meet this kind of thing, then the investor can choose to completely terminate, which is under the agreement for sale. And once basically you terminate, as the developers advocates, you're going to prepare the termination, basically a termination notice. Basically you are terminating the agreement for sale, and what TSAVO does is you are going to be refunded your full purchase price, or the purchase price you had paid up until that point you are terminating, it's going to be refunded to you within 90 days, which I think it's a very good thing, considering if an investor wants just to terminate, if things go to worse, they're able to get their refund back within 90 days.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question here. What's the process of handing over my apartment to TSAVO Lifestyle for management? I think that we'll get to cover in our next webinar next week on Wednesday. But the process is simple. You will be given the property management agreement once you have completed payment, and then now from there, once you've signed, we are good to go. But more details will be discussed in that webinar. There's also there's also Evans who is asking, when are we starting to let? Nataka rent bwana. So we already have tenants we have begun letting. Letting began on 1st of April, and we already have tenants who are really coming and choosing the apartments they want to live in. So if you have completed payment, we prioritize you we prioritize your units for the tenants to actually occupy, so that you can begin to receive your rental income as soon as possible. Yeah, so, and we'll be discussing more of that in our property management webinar, where we'll be having TSAVO Lifestyle, which is the management company that sorts out and makes the rental income as passive as possible. There's a question here, when is further completed? Getting completed. So we'll be in touch with you, but the practical completion is June. We're looking at May, June. So the project will be complete. And if you haven't gotten a chance to visit site, unaweza pitia hapo, you see, and every week on Saturday we have site updates. So I'm pretty sure you've been keeping track of the progress that we've been making on site. So there's also another question here. Hi, as investors in the 2 one-bedroom apartments, we are curious about any considerations for my European wife. Can you advise the way forward? Thanks. His name is Peter Gua. So I think maybe they're looking at ownership, something that we were talking about as investment vehicles, ownership, transfer, yeah.
Okay, I don't know what it means by European wife, but let me.
Muzungu.
No.
A foreigner.
Because okay, I don't know how I've understood this question is like the investor wants to onboard his wife to say the purchase. So basically, in this kind of transactions, so if investor has purchased an apartment and they've been making monthly payments and all that, and they wish to add on their spouse, friend, or whichever, maybe a close person to them, and what happens is they do something we call an assignment, which will attract an administrative cost of which is extra fees of Kenya shillings 10,000. And what happens is in this kind of an assignment, basically you are just transferring the legal rights, obligations, and benefits to that other spouse whom you want to bring on board to this purchase. And basically, the both of you become purchasers. Say you're purchasing apartment, say B12 at TSAVO Step Up. So both of you become purchasers in that particular apartment, and there is no, basically, the assignment, there is no consideration which is payable in this assignment. Basically, you are just doing it for free, not for free, like for free, you are not paying the cost because there is an administrative cost, but basically, you are just transferring the rights, obligations, and benefits to that spouse.
So I think they also specified, maybe you can continue, they specified that I want to know about her as a foreigner. What are the requirements now for her baby to invest and to also be onboarded?
Okay. Great question, because we have a lot of foreigners who've invested here at TSAVO, and basically what really happens for an investor to be able to purchase here at TSAVO, the first thing they'll have to be in their mind is getting the KRA PIN, which is the basically the KRA is Kenya Revenue Authority, and they usually issue a PIN certificate to all taxpayers in Kenya, and it is important for that particular investor to have that KRA PIN. So if an investor is seeking to purchase or invest here at TSAVO, the first thing they should consider is that particular KRA PIN, so that with that KRA PIN we are able to start the legal documentation, and also the way they are going to basically have those legal documentation. Basically what I'm speaking about is the agreement for sale. So, and as we process the KRA PIN, what the investor can do is start making their payment was the purchase price.
Okay. I think that was satisfactory. I hope Mr. Pete Gua, your question has been answered. There's Paul Miner here who says, when is Royal Suburbs Phase 2 being complete? And also, will you share a simple flow chart on the process of getting the sectional title? I think this we outlined. Yeah, and Royal Suburbs will be done by next quarter. So keep your... Hey. Be on the lookout. Sorry, be on the lookout. I think I'm trying to multitask, and it's impossible to do the same. So I see Moses Gidaiga, who says, when undertaking management of developments, does TSAVO Lifestyle take out insurance of the apartment against fire and related perils? Maybe you can take that question, although we'll still be addressing it in our next webinar.
Yeah, so particularly on insurance, there is, specifically with an investor's unit, it is your obligation, should you wish to insure, whatever is within your unit, it's your obligation as the apartment owner to do so. But the development in general is insured against fire. I wouldn't say it's lifestyle, but the developer in general ensures that the development is insured against fire. But again, it's important to stress that for your specific unit internally, things with electricity faults, if something is stolen, you have the obligation for yourself individually within your apartment to insure your apartment should you wish to do so.
All right.
Yeah.
So there's a very good question here. I think it's our last question. Jas Gavi says, in case you plan to live in your apartment and hence no rent income, will you still pay rent income to the government?
So the rental income tax is only payable if you're receiving rent. So if you're living in your unit, you will not charge yourself the rent. So it's only payable if you're actually receiving rental income from a unit. So if you live in your house, you're not receiving rent, neither are you paying rent, so therefore there's no rental income tax you will be paying. However, you let out the unit to somebody else, you'll be receiving a rental income tax, and it's now to check whether you fall within the threshold. So yeah, one of the ways of not paying the tax is living in the unit. So yeah.
All right. I thought that was going to be the last question. Just Gavi says, do foreigner investors have to have an Adhisasa account, and when they have cleared the payments? So 2 questions. Do foreigner investors get to have an Adhisasa account when they have cleared the payment? I think it is one question. Yeah, I think maybe Alfred can add on, but yes, foreign investors also need to have an Adhisasa account. All transfers will be done on Adhisasa regardless. So they do, and we do offer advice to foreign investors who feel they need advice on the process of doing or obtaining the Adhisasa accounts. So any foreign investor who feels they'd like to reach out to us on the nitty-gritties on the process, we are more than happy to assist. I think our contacts will be displayed, so feel free to just reach out to us
Alfred, I don't know if you have control.
Yeah. Lewis, I think what you've said is true. And just to add on something on the Atisasa account, basically, all the investors will need to have that Atisasa account, basically for purposes of the transfer, because ideally we can't do the transfer without that Atisasa account. And for investors who are purchasing individually, once you go to the Atisasa login, once you are setting up your Atisasa account, you'll see an individual option, which now you can use to create your Atisasa account under the individual account. Then if you are purchasing the apartment as a company, there's also a company option, which you can choose from there. Then you follow all the prompts which the site will give you. Then you'll be able to create your Atisasa account. But just heads up, before you go to the Atisasa account, you need, if it's an individual, you need to have your IDs, your KRA PIN, and if it's a company, the certificate of incorporation and the logo of that particular company. But the rest of the information is basically provided on that particular site. So it's not that complicated. But should you wish to for us to assist you in that kind of a transaction, assisting you in creating a Atisasa account, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be ready to assist you.
All right. I think with that being said and done, we've come to the end of our webinar. Now, in case they need help, as you've mentioned, where do they find you, especially when seeking legal counsel?
Yes, so we are located at Carlson Towers and at the crescent of Parklands Road, on the first floor to the right. You can pop in, pay us a visit. We're happy to assist you. We do consultations, and we also onboard clients on the long term, so we're happy to assist. Alternatively, you can also reach out to us on email on fmcgroup@FMC Advocates, or you can call us. Our lines, our mobile number will be displayed as well. And we're happy to assist anyone who needs legal assistance, from developments, real estate developments, to commercial transactions, corporate structuring, intellectual property, technology and data protection, succession, dispute resolution. It's a whole wide of range of services that we provide, and we look forward to seeing you all should you require our services.
All right. So your last words as we leave our investors to have a great night ahead.
Just my last word to the investors and the potential investors out there. I'm sure we have a lot of potential investors who are watching us from different places. So I just want to encourage you to invest with TSAVO, come and invest with TSAVO. And basically this is for your, the slogan is financial independence, retire early. So basically if you want to have that financial freedom, come invest with TSAVO. And we as the developers lawyer, we are here to support your investment journey. Basically with all matters legal, we'll support you until the end, until you get your sectional title. And to all the investors for developments which have been complete, like TSAVO Step Up investors, I encourage you to continue making your purchase price. And if you wish to make lump sum payment, it is to your advantage, considering that you are going to get the apartment once the handover is going to be complete. Then to the investors who are still not made their stage 1 and stage 2 cost in Step Up, I encourage you to make those particular costs, so that when the apartments will start to get being handed over to the investors, then you're able to get your apartment and you start receiving rent. Or if you want to live there, you can start living there. Then, as we've discussed, it is also important that you think about the management of that particular apartment, who is going to manage that particular apartment. And I think this kind of consideration, it is important to have this consideration, so that when that time reaches, you're able to make an informed decision. And I hope this particular live session was informative, and you've been able to learn a lot with respect to what happens after a project has been complete.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot, and I hope our investors have learned a lot. I think my one parting shot would be proactiveness. Of course, you may feel that you have complied with majority of your obligations, but there's so much ahead that needs to be done. with respect to if it's payment of just stage 3 or if it's following up on execution. These are important aspects of the process that cannot really be overlooked. And we look forward to investors really taking this up and just taking up that obligation and saying, I also have a part to play in closing and completing the sale transaction. But otherwise, we look forward to continue helping our investors, and we look forward to seeing more of you as we continue to our projects. For our investors that have a step up, we'll interact a lot more now that we are practically almost at the titling stage. So thank you so much for taking the time, and I wish you a lovely night.
All right, so thank you so much for taking time to join. But before we leave, we like to remind, like they've said, all the investors, kama unataka rent bwana, it's about time that you speed up the the payment process. And in case you have any pending questions, our finance team, our legal team are at your disposal so that you can ask all the questions that you need and seek clarification for anything that you are not sure about. And this coming Saturday, the 6th, we'll be having a bus tour. We'll have an opportunity to tour both our complete and ongoing projects. Tutaanza pale Kencom, and then our first stop will be at TSAVO Delight in Kileleshwa, our newest project. And then after that, we'll go to TSAVO Skywalk, which is our already complete project, being letting for almost 2 years, and you'll get a chance to interact with people, see how we run the property management side of it, how it is done, see how the apartments have been are being managed, etc., etc. And then from there we'll go to TSAVO Rising, which is off Oyakiwe, opposite Ilri, along Naivasha Road. There we will get to an opportunity to see our ongoing project, and lastly we'll be stopping at TSAVO Step Up, which is our newly complete project. And we're so excited that the project now is complete, and soon our investors, especially you investor, is going to begin receiving rental income. And with that being said and done, if you haven't subscribed to our site updates, please make sure that you do. Every single week on Saturday, we do send site updates to tell you what has been happening kwa ground, what progress has happened for every site across all our projects. And so if you haven't subscribed, please make sure that you do. And we also get to share a lot of beneficial content on financial independence, retire early. So please make sure, if you haven't followed us across all our social media platforms, it is at savo.ke. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we can have and engage in conversations that are going to help us steer our way to financial independence. And with that all being said and done, asanteni sana, and thanks to our wonderful team behind the scenes. Big shout out to you. And also our team that works behind the scenes, the finance team, the fire partners, all these people who make this dream of becoming financially independent a reality. Kudos to you, and have a lovely night, and see you at the top. Barikiwe sana.
In the heart of this vibrant city, TSAVO Delight emerges as a beacon of beauty, seamlessly blending the pulse of urban life with the tranquility of nature. This isn't just a location. It is an investment haven promising boundless returns for those who dare to invest. They say the golden rule in real estate is location, location, location. TSAVO Delight, just 3 minutes west of Nairobi's Central Business District, is strategically positioned within the prestigious Westland Sub-County, east of Lavington, south of Muthangari, west of Kilimani, and cradled by the Kishore River, a truly exclusive haven. TSAVO Delight isn't just a property, it is a lifestyle. Strategically located along Oloitoktok Road, a stone's throw from the Total petrol station at Kileleshwa Junction, this is your golden ticket to a life of convenience and opportunity. The good news is you can own a piece of Kileleshwa with 0 deposit and 0% interest rates. Imagine the joy of having your money work for you. Our flexible payment plan spans up to 5 years, making ownership a reality for everyone. We have the following typologies available for you to get started. Studios at 3.2 million Kenyan shillings, superior studios at 3.8 million Kenyan shillings, 1 bedroom at 4.7 million Kenyan shillings, 2 bedroom at 7.6 million Kenyan shillings. What are you waiting for? Log on to www.tsavo.ke now, book your unit and secure your financial future. TSAVO, earn while you sleep.